your options and everything?
You are on air now, Raj, just FYI.
Okay, so everybody who's in the Hangout right now can hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah. Nod if you can hear me, everyone. Yeah, okay, so I no longer see Ritu on my screen. Did she?
I'm going to chat with her and we'll figure it out.
You're going to get her back on. Okay,
Yeah.
so the plan for tonight, Karen is going to walk us through her presentation, probably about approximately 30 minutes, but you're welcome to ask questions while Karen is talking. To ask a question, does everyone know on the left-hand side of your screen, like if you hover sort of to the very far left of your screen, there's a blue box at the top that says chat. If you press that, a little bar will open up on the right-hand side that says group chat. Does everyone have it? I'm just going to say I'm here. If everyone says I'm here, then I know everyone sees it. You see me on the right-hand side there?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Good, good.
Oh, there.
Or something.
So I don't see, okay, Karen, Kazim, I don't see, okay, Tazim is muted. So I don't know if she's muted on purpose. I hope you can hear me, Tazim. So also everything we're recording right now is going to be recorded for YouTube. So if you don't want to be seen or heard, you can mute your microphone or your camera. I like how so to mute yourself is at the very top of the, if you kind of hover to the top of the screen, there's a little button that says turn camera off. If you, for any reason, you don't want to be showing your face because it's going to be recorded for YouTube. That sounded horrible. Everyone looks awesome. But for whatever reason, if you don't, if you're in the witness protection program or any other good reason why you wouldn't want to be, or you have small children and we're up all night or something like that, totally understandable. Yeah, so while Karen's talking, let's use the chat window if you have a question, and then at the end, she's going to open it up for all of us to talk and ask questions. Is there anything else about Google Plus that anyone doesn't understand that I missed?
I would suggest actually while we do the presentation part that you do mute yourself, just because sometimes we get feedback, or sometimes children run screaming into the room, or husbands or whatever.
Yeah, or husbands or dogs or whatever,
or dogs.
Right?
Just, yeah, or people cough, and then we can unmute ourselves when we're ready to chat.
Awesome. So the only person I haven't heard from in our group chat is Tazim, so hopefully you can hear us, Tazim, but I'm going to assume you can because I haven't gotten a message from you that you can't hear us. So let's all mute ourselves so Karen can take over. Okay. I just want to tell you guys, like Karen said, she has a ghostwriting business and does freelance writing and is just the best speaker I've ever heard talk about editorial calendars and probably the most organized speaker I know, so she's good. She's good. Okay, I'm muting myself now.
Okay. I'm just going to share my screen with you to show you, oh, hello, Brennan. Okay. To show you my presentation. Oh, I'm already present, so can everyone see that? I have to ask you to unmute yourself just to tell me if you can see my presentation.
I can't see it.
No.
I can see it now.
Oh, it's here. It's here now.
Okay, good. Okay, sorry about that. That was probably just a lag. Okay, so I have to show it to you in this way simply because there's something wrong with my PowerPoint presentation, my PowerPoint program. So if I show it to you in the slideshow mode, it just shuts the whole thing down. So bear with me. We'll just have to look at it this way. The way I thought that we would proceed tonight is just I do have some information that I want to go through with you guys. But I do also want to hear from you what your sort of questions are. And then I thought at the very end we could just open it up for a bit more of a discussion about what kinds of challenges sorry, there's lots of noise from one. Just open it up to some discussion about what challenges you guys are facing and specific questions that you might have. Okay, so let's get started. So we are going to talk about editorial calendars, and I put for bloggers since it sounds like most of you are in that category. We'll cover what an editorial calendar is, How you can build one. Of course, I want to try to convince you that you need an editorial calendar, and I'll tell you a couple of the reasons why I think that they can be really beneficial in bringing you to that next level. And then I'll give you some tips and hints. And then I thought we could end with what I call a mastermind session, which is where we take some of your biggest challenges and we start to hash them out as a group so that you can actually leave this talk with some really practical things that you can put into place. Talks are great and everything, but if you don't leave feeling like you can actually apply it to your life, then it's just not as beneficial for you. So why don't we start with what is an editorial calendar? I also wanted to, before we get into all of the details of what like a formal definition might be, I wanted to say in the world that I work in, I write blogs for small business owners, people who know that they want to be in the blogging world, but they don't know exactly how to go about doing it or what they should write about or how they should write. And a lot of people know that they should be in the blogging world, but they don't even understand exactly how the mechanisms work. And it used to be that we say, oh, okay, it's called content marketing, and if you are using content marketing, you're doing it to, get a lot of SEO. SEO is, I'm sure all of you know what SEO is, and it used to be the big thing. You tried to construct your website in such a way that you could. Oh, now we're getting feedback. Is everybody muted? Yeah, okay, good. Okay, so it used to be with SEO that people thought, you had to construct your website in such a way that Google would find you. And now, I'm sorry, I'm just going to turn this off, somebody's. Okay. And now a lot of people are saying it's more and more about content. So if you fill your website with great content, you give Google more and more reasons to find you and more ways to find you. And it's more about, instead of stuffing your blog posts with keywords, it's more about using your blog posts to create engaging content and building a community so that you're not just writing for a search engine, because the tricky part I think that people are realizing is that Google keeps changing its algorithm and you can't figure it out. So why not use it for what it really should be used for, which is creating a community. So then when you're creating community, you really need to think about what your audience needs. It's less about what you want to share and more about what your audience needs. And so I want to kind of encourage you and hopefully convince you through the course of this to really think like a content marketer, because you all are content marketers. You may be writing not to sell a product, but you are trying to create a community so that you can have more and more people reading your blog, maybe to monetize your blog, whether now or down the road. And that really, requires that you think strategically. So an editorial calendar is really a tool to allow you to think strategically, because it's a way for you to organize the content on your blog. It's also a really effective way of staying ahead of the curve. So if you think about timelines in traditional media, people are thinking right now about Christmas. I mean, that's shocking for all of us because we're in the heat of summer. But when you look at editorial workouts, that's what people are talking about now. And if you're really going to get yourself organized for the year, you kind of need to start thinking about that kind of thing that far out. If you want to be working on monetizing your blog and thinking about sponsorships, then that's what the media and PR companies are working on right now. They're working on Christmas. So you need to be approaching them to talk about Christmas, at least if, back to school, Christmas, all of those things, that's what's coming next. So having an editorial calendar really kind of frames and organizes you. And it's a means to always be current and never dry. I think as writers, one of the biggest challenges we have is that sometimes we come to the screen and we are completely blank about what we should write about, and you don't feel like writing that day, but you know that your readers expect it, and so you just kind of throw anything out there, and that just kind of, there's nothing wrong with that, but that kind of takes you off your game, and maybe doesn't put your best foot forward. And I think when we talk about something that's going to live out there in the universe forever and ever, you kind of always want to be putting your best foot forward. So having an editorial calendar means that you never have to sort of go, oh my gosh, okay, what am I going to write about today? Because you've already got it all planned out. And it encourages you to be consistent. So to have a consistent presence. I think we would all like to say, oh, you could blog, 3 times a year and still have a really good audience. But and Crystal and I have talked about this, that the more you blog, the more you grow your readership. That's just the way that it works. So having a consistent presence is really going to help you do that. And so an editorial calendar lets you be showing up all the time because you're planned out. It also allows you to be strategic, which I kind of tried to talk about before when I was saying content marketing. You really want to think about how you use your content to grow your readership, to connect with your readers, and to create a sense of community. So if we talk, okay, let's just throw out a definition. So if we say, what is an editorial calendar? So it's a bird's eye view of your blog's content in the future, usually organized in some kind of calendar template. It can be anything you want. It can be pen and paper. It can be poster sized and put on your office wall. It could be pocket sized. It could be in a program. There are WordPress plugins that are editorial calendar plugins. Some you have to pay for, or you could do it in Excel. It really comes down to what works best for you. And then again, why should I have one? All bloggers should think like content marketers. So you need to think about what your content strategy is. And so I'm going to give you some tips for how to arrive at that. The first thing you need to know is the first thing you need to do before you even start to hash out what your content is going to be, and some of you may have already done these kinds of exercises, whether you rebranded or when you first started your blog, you need to know who you are and what you're all about. So one of the first things I like to do is to talk about who the audience is. So if you've already got an existing blog, who is your audience? How do they think? How do they feel? What do they do? And when we talk to small businesses, I mean, that's what small business owners need to do when they first start up their business. They need to hash out who is going to be buying that product or service. And it's not just, oh, she's, a woman and, maybe she's a happy person. It's very specific. Like you need to create almost like an avatar of who that reader is. And it doesn't have to be, oh, that, 100% that person actually exists in this world. It is a little bit of a thought exercise, but it is quite specific. So she's 35 years old. She's got 2 kids. She lives in suburbia. She, drinks tea in the morning and then she starts her day. That kind of very specific. You could even, some coaches will encourage their people to actually map out, this is what she does at 2 o'clock, this is what she does at 5 o'clock. But that kind of just gives you a sense of who that person is, because it's going to tell you what kinds of things what kind of things are they interested in reading, and how can you service them. And so then the next thing is, why do they come to you? So all of us have a unique perspective on the world, and all of our readers are coming to us because we have that unique perspective. So what is the problem that your reader has, and how can you solve that problem for that person in a unique, specific and unique way? Because if you're just writing in the same way that anybody else writes, like if I don't write like Selma and I don't address the we may address the same problem, but we're going to come at it from 2 different perspectives. So what do you think it is about you that makes what you do unique, and how does it service that problem that they have in a unique way? And another thing I always encourage people to do ongoing, but especially when you're creating an editorial calendar, is to really understand your metrics. So what are your top performing posts? Take a look at what those top 5 or those top 10 posts are, and try to think about what's common about all of those posts, because your readers are telling you something. If they are really engaged with that post because you got 50 comments on it, or you got 10 shares, or it had a lot of page views, start to really mine that information and say, is there a common thread there? Like, do my readers really like it when I post pie recipes? Or are they really, maybe your weekend suppers are the ones that have the highest hits? Well, then you should be doing more weekend suppers, right? Because people are really, really enjoying that. And so you always need to look at why as well. Okay, and then the second piece of it is you need to know where you are going. I love the concept, and I think Crystal is the one who first introduced me even to this terminology, blue sky. You really need to have blue sky meetings with yourself. So you need to set some time aside once a week, once a month, whatever, where you can kind of meditate on where do you want to go. So if you're here right now at point A, what's your point B? What does that look like? And in a perfect world or blue sky, give yourself that freedom or that space to really think about what do you want to be known for? What do you want people, to have an award ceremony for you in 10 years? And what are they saying you've done that's significant for them? I did an exercise once where I think it was exactly that. This coach had me visualize what people are gathering at an award for me, and what are they saying, and why are they gathered together? What have I done that has brought them together? So you can think about that too in terms of your content. If, let's say, your #1 post is featured on your favorite website, what is that post about? So what do you want to be known for? And then you need to think, is there a disconnect between who I am now and where I want to go? And then it's in that valley or in between those 2 points that you really want to put yourself so that you can start to think about what content can get me from where I am right now to where I want to be going. And you might find that if you give yourself a lot of space to think about that, it might actually shift your whole strategy, because you might sort of soon discover that you actually really want to be writing about fixing cars or something, and you're not writing about that at all. Of course, you need to keep your readership in mind, but there are subtle shifts that you can make that are sort of have your big picture in mind. And that's all about being strategic, is when you have your big picture in mind. So you also need to take a little break from that sort of meditative stuff. There are some practical things that you need to think about too. So you need to think about how often will you be posting. Yes, more is still better, but you also need to be practical. What fits into your life? Is it once a week? Is it twice a week? Is it more than that? And you can also think about, will you always be the author? And if not, who will contribute posts? And again, blue sky is a really awesome way to approach it, because you might have people who you really admire and who you would want to see guest posting on your blog, and you might think, oh, that's not possible, but I bet you it is. I bet you if you asked, people probably would be really receptive to that kind of thing. So don't be afraid to put some blue sky ideas down. It might just lead to some kind of series or some kind of topic that you want to go to in depth with somebody else. And strategic alliances are awesome. I mean, that's part of using your network to boost your influence, is by creating alliances with people. And, networks like this are awesome for that reason. Okay, now you're sitting in this valley between who you are now and where you want to go. You have a sense of what posts are top performing for you. You need to think about the problems that your readers might have. So go back to that avatar that you created and brainstorm as much as you can. What kind of problems does that person face in her life? What kinds of things do you want to be addressing? When we build websites for small businesses or large businesses, we often think of FAQs. So these are common questions that come up all of the time, and people always have these pages on their websites where they answer these common questions. Blog posts are amazing ways to answer frequently asked questions, because I tell you, it really works for SEO. I love telling people that one of my clients told me about this exercise program, and I didn't go and buy it then for whatever reason. I wasn't ready. I wasn't at that point in the sales cycle. And then I was Googling, because I have abdominal separation, and I Googled abdominal separation and Pilates. And this woman, the same woman that my client had recommended to me, her blog post came up. And of course, what did I do? I bought her exercise system. So that's an example of how I had that's probably a frequently asked question for this woman. She wrote a blog post about it, and Google helped me to find it and it was what pushed me over to purchase. I know some of you don't have products or services that you purchase, but when people find you and you've solved a problem for them, they're going to become loyal readers. They're going to pin it. They're going to, share it on social. It's going to be really good traction for you. So I like to give myself space to always brainstorm what kinds of problems to solve. And then that also kind of gets you out of this SEO loop of having to always think in terms of keywords, because just naturally by thinking about the problems, you're going to naturally think about the keywords, and it's just going to come, instead of stuffing keywords into posts, it's just going to come a little bit more organic. And then of course you can also think in terms of the calendar. So if you're a craft blogger, then you're probably going to want to build out Easter crafts, keeping in mind that Google takes about 8 weeks to index content. So you're going to want to be backtracking a little bit so that you're posting your Easter content at the right time. A lot of people are starting to think about their content for back to school right now because of the way that this cycle works. So if you are working on your editorial calendar, you're going to want to plan for that. And then while you're still in this space of brainstorming, there's one other thing that I really highly recommend you do. And I think everybody should do this on an ongoing basis. So set up the channels for yourself so you can do this on a daily, I recommend daily basis. Know what other people are doing. I think sometimes we shy away, and especially as women, from the idea of competition. And I don't mean that it has to be competition in the sense where, oh, we don't like that person and we don't like what, oh, I have to beat them at this game. It doesn't have to be like that. But recognizing that we are all kind of in this same playing space and we are all inside of one giant conversation. And what makes you unique is what unique perspective you have to add to the conversation. But if you don't know what that conversation is, you're not going to know what to add to it, right? Like if you're not at the party talking about what hearing what other people are saying about the topic, you're going to have missed it. So get yourself at the party, start looking at what people are sharing on social, create interest lists on Twitter, and figure out how to do that, or talk to Crystal. I think you can do it on Facebook too. And you can use other tools like Feedly and Google Alerts, just these kinds of things that sort of flag content for you. Pick a couple of bloggers who you really admire and who you sort of align yourself with, and read their blogs on a regular basis. Find out what kinds of things they're saying, and then don't repeat what they're saying, because you're at a cocktail party. You don't just go in and Raj says something and then I jump in at right that moment later and say the exact same thing as her. Everybody would look at me like that's weird, because it is, right? You don't say it in the same way. You find your own unique perspective on it. So one example that I could use would be, Crystal and I have this client who is in addictions and mental health, and he's also a naturopath, and he wanted to write about weight loss. And he wrote about weight loss on his blog in a very generic way, and I said to him, well, that's great, I'm so happy that you wrote that blog, but why not write about emotions in food addictions, because you're all about addictions. You want to address weight loss, and I get that, but instead of just talking about weight loss, because everybody's talking about weight loss, why don't you talk about the food addictions and how that sort of makes it difficult for people to lose weight? So that's just an idea of how you sort of take content that everybody's talking about, you add your voice to the conversation, but you spin it and make it your own. So knowing what others do really helps you to find your unique place within that conversation. Okay, so you kind of have this huge brain dump, and maybe it takes place over a couple of hours. Maybe it takes place, as you go on your walk every night over a series of a couple of days. But you have your big brain dump. Maybe you take out a pen and paper and you write it all down, or you type it all up, whatever system you have for working. You really just want to give yourself the space to just get everything out of your head. And then you want to make your giant list of all of the topics that you possibly could put into your calendar. And then you want to create a filter. So your filter is that positioning statement that we talked about before. It's who are you, who are your readers and how do you uniquely solve their problems. So who do you service, and what are their problems, and in what unique way do you solve those problems for them? So that creates your kind of positioning statement, and you want to take every idea that you have for content and run it through that filter. So does it fit with who I am and what I'm all about? Does it match with where I'm going, where that strategy is, what I want to be talking about? And maybe it doesn't. And it's okay to sort of recognize that, okay, this is actually a really great topic, and maybe it's a perfect topic for Raj, but it doesn't quite fit with my blog, so I'm just going to email Raj and say, hey, Raj, you should write about this. Or, you know, I'm going to put it aside. Maybe it's something I can grow into at a different time. But putting aside, the stuff you put aside really actually says more, it improves or says more about you than the stuff that you leave in. And you might find that your giant list kind of whittles down, and that's perfect, because that means that the content that you've settled on is run through the filters. It's sort of like ding, 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 it matches everything perfectly, and it's really going to be really strong content. And then you just start plotting it in. So you take your calendar in whatever form works for you, whatever you like to work in, and you just sort of start to, first I like to lay out the calendar stuff. So, you know, the stuff that's not movable, like Father's Day happens, you know, around the same time every year. You know, you're going to talk about Christmas at the same time every year. So plot that stuff in first, and then I just kind of design around it. So I put the different topics in around the ones that are more or less immovable. And you can create series if you want. So if you feel like a topic is really broad and you actually want to break it into 3 or 4 posts, then maybe the whole month of May is dedicated to that series. And then, of course, if you're hoping to get guest posts and guest bloggers, then you can start to blog in other people's blog, or to place in other people's blogs as well. And then just to leave you as we sort of come to the mastermind session of the talk with a couple of hints or tips. One of the biggest one is that this is personal. So whatever shape it takes, it doesn't have to be something that you share with anybody, or that mine doesn't look like yours and yours doesn't look like somebody else's. It's personal. So whatever form you want it to take in, whatever journey it takes for you to get there, really make it about you. And that will sort of also feed into that authenticity about finding your voice. Always stay on top of your metrics, so know how each and every blog post is performing in terms of engagement and social and page views, so that you can start to monitor which content is performing well for you and which content is not performing well for you, so that you, as much as we want to sort of, and if you want to do this, is totally fine, but as much as we kind of want to say, oh, I write for myself, I write whatever I want, that's fine, but most of us, I think, would probably say we do want to grow our readership, so we do also need to be conscious of what our readers are saying to us. Live by your positioning statement. So take authenticity as far as you could possibly take it. Be who you are and don't try to be somebody else. And as soon as you sort of dedicate yourself to authenticity, I think you'll find that pathways to success will just naturally open up for you without you having to build them. Because if you think about sort of like the top personal brands out there, it's all people who are authentic to who they are, and that sort of lives in every single thing that they do. So find every way possible to sort of bring your personal brand into, you know, the way that you construct your posts, the way that you create your photos, the way that you select your content. And it really does start with the way that you select your content. And then plan far in advance. It really is never too early to start thinking about Christmas or Easter or whatever, right? You know, the people that seem the most organized are the ones that just started early. Time, having a ton of time to lead up to things just makes things so much easier. Instead of scrambling, you know, you can actually sort of be strategic about things, and time really helps for monetization as well, so that you can start talking to companies now about Christmas instead of contacting them after they've already made their decisions, or, you know, coming so late to the party that people are like, oh, we already finished that conversation, we've moved on. So timing really is everything. And then I think just to continue on about timing, being flexible is important as well. So if there's a really hot topic that's just trending right now, be okay with sort of making your editorial calendar a bit fluid so that you can address the topic, or you can write a deeply personal post that doesn't, you know, that you, when you were supposed to do a pie recipe or whatever, just kind of to have that a little bit of flexibility, so it's an evergreen document and it's never set in stone. And then I thought we could talk, we have 20 minutes left, so I thought that we could talk about, that's my Twitter handle and my email address if anybody needs to contact me, and the 3 hats that I wear. Yeah, so then I guess I'll just, I can stop presenting and open it up to anybody who should have any questions.
All right, who's going to go first? Thank you, Karen. That was awesome.
You're welcome. Or if you want me to go over something again, I can.
Well, I had at one point in your conversation, you had said something about starting. Oh, first, SABN, you're welcome to unmute yourself and talk now. Everyone's still muted. If anyone has a question, you're welcome to unmute yourself. But I was going to ask you, said something about Google takes 8 weeks to index content.
Yeah.
So you don't think it's like a problem for a reader? You don't think readers will be a little bit annoyed if I start writing about Christmas in November? Like, that's okay?
Well, Christmas, no. I mean, Christmas starts, and like, if you're my mother, Christmas starts
Christmas
in October.
is the wrong example. Let's say Diwali. Like, so we have a festival in November called Diwali. Like, if I wrote a post in September saying like, hey, I'm thinking about Diwali, or I don't know, here's my Pinterest board about Diwali, would that be, do you think readers would be annoyed?
I think you kind of, it's the same with this discussion about SEO, right? Where, you know, oh, how many keywords do I stuff into my post? And you have to find that nice balance between what you think is most comfortable for your readers and what you want to do in order to get seen on Google. It takes that long to index content. So if you're hoping that your Easter post will rank or Diwali post will rank in time for people who are actually searching for it a week or 2 out, then you do kind of need to get it up there. But if you feel like your readership would be alienated by that, then you kind of have to weigh that. It's a pro and con thing, and that's why being strategic also involves knowing your readership as much as you possibly can. Engagement is great because it boosts your posts and that kind of thing, but engagement is also great because the more you can talk with your readers, the more you can learn about them, and the more you know about your readers, the more you can sort of tailor your content. So if you think like your readers would be alienated by that, then maybe you don't worry so much about ranking. You worry more about what your community thinks of you.
Right.
And Crystal and I have had that conversation, so I don't know if Crystal wants to add anything. You can feel free if you want to, Crystal. No, she doesn't want to. Crystal's not feeling well.
Did anybody else have a question or something, or even a topic something that you're stuck on within your blog that you want to get a little collective brainstorming going on? Everyone's muted. Can everybody hear me?
I just wanted to ask as well how everybody reconciles the knowing thyself versus knowing your audience. I mean, I'm pretty familiar with my metrics and the posts that are popular, that I see are pretty popular with my audience, are not my favorite posts and are not, they take more of an effort to write, sort of. So I'm just wondering how everybody deals with that. I mean, do you guys have the same problem, or are your posts generally, you know, are you happy with posts? I mean, I've never written anything that I'm not happy about, but I can't say that, you know, for me, for cooking, right? There are certain cuisines that I'm not that interested in, but that seems to be what's popular. So I mean, do you guys face the same thing?
Karen, do you want me to go first, or?
Well, I was just you might be able to answer that better than me, but I was just going to say maybe No, you go first, and I'll think more on what I was
Okay,
going to say.
I'm just gonna give you my feelings. So my struggle is like similar to yourself. Like I write really detailed DIY posts, and sometimes I think I'm gonna knock it out of the park, and this is like my Pinterest crazy viral post, and I get like I don't know, like 30 more people visiting it than usual. And then my most popular posts sometimes are like, okay, I use coconut oil in the summer instead of this other oil, right? So it can be a little disheartening because I'll be like, okay, so I worked really hard on this one post and I was sure it was, the thing. So what I try and do, and I don't know if this is of any, like if this is, it'd be hard. Okay, I guess I would never post something if it was like a cuisine that I wasn't going to eat or a project I wasn't going to do. But I do try and plan one post a week that I know is going to get traffic, like kind of like has a link bait kind of a title or is that sort of thing, knowing all the while. But it also, for me, it's worked out as in, I think maybe I misunderstood you where you said the ones that people like are harder to write. For me, the bonus has been the ones that seem to go viral are the easiest to write. Like I can post an outfit photo sometimes and it'll get way more traffic than a complicated tutorial. So I guess for me, I've just made the decision that once a week I'll post something that I think will get clicked on or will get accepted by Craft Gawker or something, knowing that I need the traffic. But it is kind of hard. Like I don't know if there's really an answer to the authenticity question, Karen. Thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think you answered it really well because it is again about finding that balance. I think like when in business it's a bit different when you talk about you have to create for what people want, but you're talking about a personal journey as well. So just to create what people want all the time may not be soul satisfying, and so you kind of want to find that balance between creating what people are sort of responding to the most, and being willing to sort of grow into that persona or that different area that they just really seem to like. Obviously there must be something in those posts that people are picking up on. Maybe it's not the topic, maybe it's the way in which you write it. Maybe you say they're difficult to write, so maybe but maybe there was something about that struggle that people really could identify with. And so I might sort of encourage you to kind of more examine more deeply. Maybe it's not the topic, but maybe something in the way that those posts are written that people are responding to. Sometimes it's, maybe you were a bit more personal, or maybe you were a bit not personal. It just, there just might be other reasons why people are responding to it in that way. But I think having, again, that balance between what's good for your soul, but also good for, growing that readership. But you also have to ask yourself, well, you want to grow your readership that matches with who you are too. So you don't necessarily, if that's not the right audience for you, want to keep growing that audience. Being able to let go of some of the people who don't fit naturally with what you want to be doing is a hard thing, but it's also a natural process. I try to encourage people when I do newsletters to see things that way. They think in terms of, if I have thousands of people on my list, it's awesome. But it's like, no, you have to have the right people. Like one right person is worth more than 50 not right people.
Yeah. I mean, I guess it kind of comes back to the reason why you started the blog. I mean, for me, I didn't start out wanting to monetize it, but I mean, I started it as a creative outlet. But as it's gotten more popular and so on, my audience, the local audience, the popular ways to monetize your blog are would be to you know appeal to your local audience, and the stuff that I post does not appeal to. I mean, the culture over here, the culture in South America is very different. So I mean, doing that would mean changing my entire voice, changing my entire, those entire structure and everything. So I mean, I guess it comes back to why you started as well.
I wouldn't change your voice because you can't. This is funny coming from me because I ghostwrite. You can't be somebody else, right? You can't create another voice for yourself. I would always say default is you go with your what comes naturally to you. And if you are authentic, that's what I think. If you're authentic, then it'll all just sort of fall into place.
I think so too. I think authenticity is like the hugest thing. You use that word a lot in it, and I think because if you end up writing posts that are going to attract more people, but you're not enjoying writing, then in the end, blogging might even teeter out for you because you're not enjoying what you're doing, right? You have to like what you're writing as well.
Yeah, and I went through the process of rebranding, but I find the funny thing is that my voice stayed the same. Like I still write in the same manner, but I completely rebranded the topic I write about 2 years ago. But yeah, I don't know. I think, I don't know, this is maybe another conversation and it's more about monetizing. I don't think that, personally, I don't think that you should create your content for monetizing until you get to a point where you're like, okay, well, there's this particular series I'm trying to sell, or a brand approached me for an editorial about something, so I'm going to create a topic about it. I find when you try and write something that's going to be monetizable, which is not really a word, it doesn't really work out. I would say just write from the heart, and then it sounds corny because everyone just said this, the brands and the right people, like your tribe will find you, or whatever that.
Yeah.
I should have that bumper sticker, your tribe will find you.
Yeah. Yeah. It's too hard being someone who you're not. It's exhausting.
Yeah.
I have a question, Karen. We're all in a very similar niche. You were talking about how, finding a unique way to talk about the same topic. So all of us, it's sort of strange, like we are a very small community of bloggers, and a lot of us are going to write about the same things. Like when there's a festival or a holiday, we're all going to write about, when I was a kid, this is how we celebrated this holiday. Or a lot of the times there's like one recipe that's always made on that holiday, and there's a good chance that 5 or 6 of us are going to write that same recipe. Like, how can we individualize, or do you have any tips for us on how we can still, I don't know, keep it unique within that?
Yeah, I think if you think in terms of the why instead of the what you're writing about, I think it's just going to naturally be distinct. So when you talk about childhood memories, it's not really about the actual memory itself. It's about how it made you feel. And writing about it, again, is not really about telling people about the memory. It's about sharing the feeling. And the why, when you think about content from the perspective of why are you writing about this? Why are you sharing this? It's going to be different for every single person. So your memory of how you celebrated that particular festival as a child is naturally going to be different than somebody else's. But beyond that, your reasoning for writing it, or the feelings that it creates in you, or that you're trying to share with other people, is going to make it different too, I think.
Yeah, that's right.
The more, it's not that you have to sort of be extremely personal in everything that you write, but when you allow that why of why you do the things that you do to come through in your writing, it just naturally creates voice.
Right. Okay. Did anybody else have a question? Sorry, Karen, did I just talk over you?
No, I was just going to say, I think it's like recipes, right? Like everybody, you just did that awesome chai tea recipe for Hello Creative Family, and chai tea, everybody has a different chai tea recipe, right? Like it's just, and that's because we're all individuals. We all had different memories and grew up in different parts of the world, and different family and that kind of thing. So I think even when you're in the same topic, you can be different, and I think the more you can find a different angle or different way of talking about it, the more successful you'll be.
Okay. Do anybody have a burning blog question or something that you're struggling with that you want to toss around?
I do. I'm just starting out, and although I did marketing for my company when I worked for them, on my own, I'm kind of struggling to figure out how to manage my editorial calendar and manage my blog post ideas. Where should I host them? Should I keep them on Google Calendar? Should I do pen and paper? And I was just curious to know what you all use and how you kind of manage that whole ideation process, and then your actual calendar. I'm just curious to see what works for everyone else.
I do with my clients. I take them through like a series of questions. They answer them by email. I sit down with all of their answers and a pen and paper, because that's how I think. With pen and paper is how I think. And then I write out all the ideas in pen and paper, and then I create the spreadsheet in Google Docs, and then we share it. But I probably do that because of the sharing mechanism in Google Docs more than anything.
Yeah.
Anyone else? Does anyone else have an editorial calendar? Or is it all in your head?
No, my process is a lot messier than yours. I use those, what surprise. I use those like index cards, recipe cards, and I just write out like all my ideas and stick them up on like a cork board. And then I also have like, I like pen to paper, so I scribble all my ideas down. But for the actual functionality within WordPress, I use a plugin called Editorial Calendar.
Okay.
And I usually try and fill that in about 30, like for about 30 days. I mean, it doesn't always stay that way, but I try and fill it in for 30 days, kind of like Karen said. Look, I know my 3 things Thursday. I kind of have a loose schedule for like I try and do 1 recipe, 1 DIY, 1 lifestyle post. And then what I really like about WordPress calendar plugin is that you can schedule your posts.
Mm-hmm.
So it will auto post them. So if I've had a chance to batch write some stuff, it'll schedule them. And it also like will tweet them and share them and stuff. But I tend to have like a big, messy, giant mess of Post-it notes all over my house and on my fridge and on my bathroom mirror because I always get ideas when I brush my teeth. Somehow that's like when I get my best blog post ideas. So yeah, that's my messy process. Selma, do you use that?
Yeah, I do have an editorial calendar. What I do is like I always have just ideas coming to me at random times. So I just keep a running list on my phone, like in the notes section, that says blog post ideas, and then every time an idea comes, I like write it all there. And then what I do is I have a planner, like just a blog planner, and then I'm not ahead enough as I would like to be. I'm more like just a week or 2 ahead, but I'll go. So when I'm trying to figure out those 2 weeks, I'll go to my list, and I will plunk in the ideas that I think work for that week and the following week. And that's kind of how I use the editorial calendar. I mean, I'd like to be more ahead, but at this point I'm not. But I still feel like a week or 2 weeks is good. And then sometimes if I have like inspiration, I'm like, oh, this is a good post. I'll bump what I've put in the editorial calendar to like a week ahead so I can go with what kind of inspired me that day.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not dramatic, but it works for me.
I like to leave room for like inspiration. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Indira. Sorry.
No, I'm just gonna say I also have dozens of email drafts because whenever like inspiration comes to me, I just write it in a draft and I say, okay, I'm gonna keep it and then
Good thinking. Good thinking. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think like for creative people, it's really important to leave space to be like, hey, sometimes I wake up in the morning and it says like I should make like Alu Gobi or something on my editorial calendar, but then I feel like writing about something totally different. And I know we didn't talk about that, and I think maybe or Karen did, and I missed that part. But like. Mm-hmm. I think people get really rigid and they're like, well, if I wrote it down, I have to write about that. But I allow myself to just, if I change my mind. But the calendar, I feel like, is a must if you're a recipe or DIY blogger because of the, like you can't just really wake up in the morning and be like, this is the DIY I'm going to blog about today.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you can, but trust me, it's really not fun. I've been there.
There's a couple of programs that might be helpful too if you're not interested in Google Docs. There's also something called Evernote. I don't know if anyone's ever worked in Evernote, but it's also a way to sort of gather all of your information in one place. So there's Wunderlist too that you can use if you wanted to create it as sort of like a to-do list or have like an ongoing list. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I did mention at the very end about keeping it flexible, and I don't know that I did kind of mention how long you should create your calendar for. It's personal. One thing that I found is having a good sense of maybe the whole year, just not completely in specifics, but just kind of in a rough, raw shell. But then I like to build in specifics about 4 months out because I think then that still gives you a bit room to be a bit flexible and not overwhelmed, but you still get a lot of good content down in a 4-month chunk.
That's all super helpful. Yeah, I do a lot of Post-its right now, so I'm just trying to move from that and not be so rigid. So it's just interesting to see what everyone's creative process is.
And there's another WordPress plugin that Crystal and I have used, which is called CoSchedule. Well, you have to purchase it, though. I don't know if Raj's plugin is a purchased one or not.
No, it's free.
Okay, so that's better.
What's the place to start? Awesome. I think we maybe have time for one or two more questions if anyone has a question. No? Yes? No? Looks good. So if we're ready to wrap up, if anyone doesn't have a question, speak. No? Okay. So I just want to let you guys know that if you have further questions for Karen, I will find her email and Twitter and post it in our Facebook group. But Karen does work one-on-one if you ever need any help sort of fleshing out your editorial calendar or developing your voice further on your blog, or I suppose even if in the future you need any help with direction on working with contributors or bringing people on board. That's the kind of stuff she does in her business. So you can totally hit her up for that if you're looking for that kind of work. Yeah, and just let us know what you thought of the Hangout. You can send Salma and I an email if you have any suggestions or any ideas for future topics. And thank you so much for, especially the East Coasters, for sticking it out with us. Yes, and to the West Coast moms, I don't know what you guys gave your kids. Like maybe they have crackers and cookies and chocolates, and you put them in the closet. I didn't do that at all to my children, but for like being here right after dinner time, good job. Yeah.
Thanks so much.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Karen, and thank you, Crystal, for being sick and keeping us live and on the air and everything.
No
technical drama today.
Thank you.
Cool.
I'm going to stop the broadcast now.
Okay.
And we'll say our awkward goodbye.